Hello, this is Joshua for Frost Dragon Designs, and today I'd like to talk to you about my Undead Cleric design for Black Cat RPG Series 5, the Lichgate. Now let's get into the design. I'm going to start by saying that I think this was one of the designs that kind of didn't live up to its full potential when I expanded this project to be both living and undead versions of the classes. And I guess what I mean by that is this was one of the designs that I did early on for the undead versions. And then I had to come back and alter it once I had decided that I was going to also have the living counterparts. You know, what you'll see near the end of this is that the mallet, the hammer, the war hammer, whatever we're calling it, the mace, maul, whatever, the giant weapon he has that's flaming. At the end of this video, you'll see it's got like billowing smoke trail coming off of it and like fly ash embers coming off of it. And it's just like a really imposing look about the weapon and the effects coming off of the weapon. And I ended up removing those for two reasons. One, because it made the pin, just huge. It was a lot of extra space. But the other reason was, even when I scaled it back some to make it, in a smaller size, it was still awkward when I had this undead version in contrast to the living version that I didn't really want to do like the big billowy smoke effect. I think at one point I even tried doing the billowy smoke effect as like a white smoke, almost like a censer, like a holy smoke kind of look on the living version, and that didn't really pan out. So at the end of the day, I ended up removing that trail of smoke and the embers and that sort of thing, which, on some level I kind of regret because I really feel like that added so much character. And, it was a whole mood when you looked at it, in my opinion. It looked very wrathful, but sometimes as a designer, we have to make choices for the overall project as opposed to an individual element within that project. And that's what any of these individual pins are. They are elements of the larger Black Cat RPG project. And in this case, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't have too big of a disparity between a living and an undead version of any of the one classes. And this is just one of the designs that happened to get, in my opinion, a little bit of an unfair toning down treatment when I decided to introduce the living cleric. Having said that, they are both still clerics in the overall style of D&D. When people hear cleric, I think if they have not played D&D before, they think priest or healer. If they've played like World of Warcraft, they think of the cloth-wearing healer of the party. And sure, a cleric in this context really could, they could wear cloth if they wanted to, I suppose. And, yes, they can heal the party. But they also are typically carrying a mace and a shield or an axe or in this case, a two-handed maul. And they're going to smash some enemy skulls along the way. These are not squishy characters. These are not, I'm going to stand in the back row and you guys handle the monsters type characters. These are frontliners. And they are very good at that. They are supposed to be, protected with armor, and they're out there on the front line fighting the enemies. I mean, as you can guess from what you're seeing, I chose the Forge domain for this cleric. It's got a really interesting kind of rule set behind it. They, obviously you can think about fire is involved with it. They are creators. They're artisans. They make their own armor. So these are really interesting characters, in my opinion. A lot of really fantastic roleplay opportunities because, they're a cleric, so they're a religious character, but their religion is involved with, the creation of weapons and armor and that sort of thing. So you can kind of think of it as like a God of War support edition. Makes me think of like Hephaestus from mythology if he had to, step out of his forge and, start fighting instead of just creating the magic stuff. And I mean, I guess that's kind of where the whole flaming skeleton idea came from, is I wanted this to be like yes, in the living version's a forge cleric, but so is the undead version, but they're kind of like consumed by the flames of their own forge, I guess was, the creative direction that I was trying to take this. And to that end, both in this version and in the final version, I wanted the colors to be, muted and soiled looking, because forge work is dirty work. Like, there's a lot of carbon flying around in a forge, both from the coal furnace and from, just the oils, and it's dirty work. And I wanted them to kind of amplify that look as well. The hard work, the grime, the grit. And I think overall, this is just a really successful design. I am sad that I had to remove the billow of smoke. Maybe I'll reuse that idea at some point later on a different design. But even without it, I think this is a really strong design, and I really enjoy how it looks. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching the design process for this pin, hearing me talk about some of the thoughts I had while I was working on it. If you did, please go ahead and like and subscribe. I try to release, 1 to 2 new videos a week if I can, and I would love to have you along for the next one. So thank you again so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.